Okay, welcome everybody to the fifth Transformation Weight Control podcast. We started 5 weeks ago, and the objective, before I introduce everybody, the objective of the podcast is to dispel all the myths online. I have a long history of doing this work, 44 years, worked in research centers, hospitals, and so forth, and have invited guests who are real researchers, the real thing, like no joking around. They really know what they're talking about, and we want to dispel the myths. I was watching a TikTok video with Alex the other day. Alex is a very smart guy, and he's listening to this guy who sounds very reputable. And I'm listening with him, and I said, Alex, he's giving you the science all backward. It's like not true what he's saying. And Alex now, because he's smart, believes him though because it's reputable, and so it makes Alex like a little bit not as smart about that. Doesn't make Alex stupid. He's a smart, very smart guy. He's got a master's degree in computer security. He's a big deal guy. So we want to dispel those myths by giving you up-to-date research-based evidence from real researchers and people in the field and so forth and so forth. The other thing that we want to do is we want to, as we're going to do tonight, we want to introduce you to people who have been through this struggle of weight. And we want you really to come away understanding that this really is not your fault, that nobody I know, and again, I've been doing this almost 45 years. I have never met one person who struggled with their weight who woke up one day and thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool to have trouble with my weight? Like, nobody does that, right? And I really do want to emphasize the reason that we have Anna tonight, and Anna is not a scientist and hasn't done research, but the reason we have Anna is because I want people, and Alex wants people, to get a feel for what it's really like and to understand, truly understand, which we will get to, that this is not your fault. It just isn't. And that the bias in society and the stigma and the belief that it's your fault and a lack of willpower and character flaw, none of that is true. But we buy it and we believe it, and then it makes us feel worse. And then what do we do when we feel worse? We eat. And it just contributes to the cycle of this. But there's neurobiology behind this. There's all sorts of science behind it. And we're going to talk about some of that with Anna tonight. So here with my co-host, Alex Tushinsky. And
Good to be here.
the great thing, and then I'm going to introduce Anna, but the great thing, the best part about working with Alex, besides the fact that we've known each other 20 years and Alex has transformed his life and he's like fantastic, the most ferocious exerciser I've ever known. And I'm proud to say that I had a little role in that. But Alex is the ChatGPT of computer science. So it took me like 11 months to learn how to use Zoom. Alex does everything. So I know that this thing's going to work technically perfect, and I don't have to think about it at all. So that's the very best part. I love the guy, but that is the best. All right, so let me introduce our guest, and then we'll let her introduce herself as well. But I have known Anna since 2013, May 2013. Did you know that, Anna? Did you look that up?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
12 years ago. Anna was a member of our weight loss program when we were at St. Luke's Hospital in New York City as part of the New York Obesity Research Center. And I met her then. I think she had purple hair then, in fact.
I did not have purple hair. You always say I had purple hair. It was a very respectable blonde.
Okay. Anyway, I expect that this podcast tonight will be poignant and memorable and really leave an impression on you, because I have the uttermost respect for Anna and the struggle that she has been through and how hard she has worked. I know intimately the details of all of the struggle that she's had, and then and we're going to have her talk about that, and then we're going to transition to her decision to take a weight loss medication and how her life has changed as a result of that. And just to give you a little forewarning about that when you make the transition to a weight loss medication and it works as well as you're going to hear from Anna, it really confirms that this is science and neurobiology that's working. Because if you can take a medication that changes your life the way it's altered Anna's, as you'll hear, that's all the evidence you kind of really need. I mean, we got plenty of other evidence that we teach in our weight loss program, transformation weight control. But so Anna's been a participant in our weight loss medication support group since January when she started medication. And I did an extensive search the other day on other weight loss medication support groups, and I found one in the entire country, and they meet only once a week for 1 hour, and they have a social worker running it, and the social worker doesn't have any medical or science background. So it's okay to talk about feelings, and those are important, but you also need a lot of information and education about these meds so that you can learn how to eat and reduce side effects and all that. So we're going to get to all that.
That other group, by the way, is once a month.
Once a month. Yeah, I didn't say that. For an
You said
hour.
once a week.
Yeah, right. Not once a week. Right.
Mm.
Ours is once a week. It's 75 minutes. There's 16 to 18 people there, all who are taking medications or considering it, but most are taking them, and they come weekly and they share their stories. They help each other. They back each other up. I don't think really there's anywhere that you can get that kind of assistance and help and support. Doctors certainly have their role, but doctors are busy. They have a busy waiting room filled with sick patients. They're not necessarily just focused on weight loss like we are. This is all we focus on. They need to know 1,000 medications, 1,000,000 diseases, everything. We only need to know one thing. And so I don't fault the doctor for not being able to provide 75 minutes once a week of top-notch education. Our dietitian who works with me on this, Casey, I mean, she knows how to tell people how to eat to reduce the side effects. I mean, that's how far along she is. So we are the only one in the country doing that. And I would love to have, frankly, everybody come join us. I mean, I read the Reddit boards and the Facebook boards, and there's just people are in the dark. And, I believe that people in our medication support group could probably go on Reddit and answer all the questions because we're educating them so well. So we give the highest level of support and state-of-the-art treatment, and that's where Anna is now. So I introduce Anna, and really one of my favorite people, and just such an inspiration, and I'm so proud of her. Honestly, I've been waiting for this moment to have her on this podcast and for you to listen to what she has to say, because she is smart and articulate and successful in her career, and she has really kept her life together despite real hardship, like some of you at home can understand when you struggle with your weight as much as Anna has, because many of you probably have struggled just as much and will really, really relate. And so I expect this to be very compelling, very poignant, because that's who Anna is. And she just is psychologically oriented, and I love her emails. We have great email exchanges, and every time she sends me an email, I'm excited to open it because she's describing how her life has changed, and it's just so exciting, honest to goodness. And I even have one email that I didn't tell her I was going to read, but
Oh my God.
yeah, I know, but I'm going to, but not right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Anna for a few moments, and if you just want to, whatever you'd like to say, just to introduce yourself, and then I can start with some questions, and we can do it however we like.
Sure. No pressure from that introduction.
Yeah, no, I didn't give you no pressure. Right?
No, I really appreciate that, and it's a mutual admiration. I'm very grateful for all of the support over, oh my gosh, so many years, 2013. And I remember very clearly when I started, because I was getting ready to be in my brother's wedding. And it was another experience where I bought a dress and I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to fit in this dress. It was like another cycle of having lost weight and then gained weight, and just, a lot of people have real struggles in life, of course, but being in this place of now having so much more clarity about feeling good and really understanding what the past was like versus this moment, it is a struggle. And I have a lot more compassion for myself in this moment than I would have previously. And just thinking like, oh, it sounds trivial, I couldn't fit into a wedding dress, but it's humiliating again and again.
No,
and just,
it's
like,
really,
yeah.
We really believe that this is trauma and like a PTS, like post-traumatic stress. And I treat it that way. We had a webinar the other week with an art therapist, because art therapy deals with trauma. That's what it does. And we're going to have another professional therapist come who talks about trauma also. So I'm with you on this. I mean, I have observed this my whole career. The trauma is profound, and it scars you and it stays with you. These kinds of emotional scars, they don't just go away. They track into adulthood. So I'm really on board and very sensitive to that kind of issue.
Yeah, and I think the sort of like more the things that sound more trivial are probably just very relatable to other people too. But there is a lot of much deeper suffering around having an issue with weight for myself, and eating, and the eating habits and patterns and struggles. And before we start, I just want to say that I'm very sensitive also to there's plenty of people in the world who do not want to lose weight or change their
Right.
weight, and are happy in the body that they're in. And really, truly, this is not a sort of conversion for changing your mind into
That's a
wanting
very
to
good
lose
point, and I'm
weight.
glad you made that point. And you told me you wanted to make that point, and I had
Yeah,
a note
because
to that.
there's so much pressure. And I can only imagine that if you are someone who feels good in your body, but you've been told your whole life that you're overweight and that it's a problem, or that you're not healthy because of it, that now that there's medication out there, that it feels even more pressured. So I just want to say that
That's
this
right.
was a decision that I came to after so much, and I didn't know how it was going to go. And I agreed to do this because it's been so incredibly helpful to me. So
That's
yeah,
terrific. That's wonderful. Can you tell us or speak a little more? You mentioned the word struggle several times. Can you just sort of give folks a little bit of more of an idea about what that kind of struggle was like for you? What went through your head? What kind of bias and stigma and just internal personal angst you
it,
experienced? Because it's such a broad range
yeah,
of trauma, really. So if you wouldn't mind just maybe giving us a little insight into what your life was like before the
sure.
meds. Yeah.
It's funny that you said in the beginning that you have researchers, and I'm not a researcher, but I've been researching this my whole
Well, you know
freaking
what?
life.
It's a very good point. You really, truly, it's true.
I
You are
know the
more of an
research.
expert.
Yes.
Listen, I will say this: you learn more by listening than talking. And I have learned. I have 1,000 textbooks on my shelf, and I studied everything: physiology, science, biochemistry, everything. But no one has taught me more about this disease than the people who struggle with it. It's
Yeah.
an absolute fact. And I think it's what helps me with my sensitivity to it because I listened. I wasn't lecturing, I was listening,
Yeah.
and I got it. And I got it early in my career.
Yeah.
So go ahead. I'm sorry to
Because
interrupt.
there's so much lecturing. But anyways, there are key memories that stand out from when I was very young. Like, I remember being a 5-year-old child, and like from that point understanding that my body was bigger than other kids, that like I had a belly, that like just like having more of an awareness around my body being different, or people, just the comments that kind of stick with you, but also the food. Like, I really wanted to eat more, a lot. Like, I wanted more than the other kids wanted. I was much more focused on like, okay, but when's snack time? Like, I'm here to play, but like, at what point are we having snacks, and what do you have? Like, and I wanted to, put more dressing on my salad, or like have more cookies. So there's just like a very internal kind of normative thing that I've lived with my whole life, of that sort of
Were you,
patient.
when those kinds of experiences were occurring, were you aware that it was different than the other kids? Like you said, 5 years old, 6, 7, 8. I mean, were you kind of aware that, you were special in a certain kind of way?
I think so. I think there was a difference. Like, I have a very also a very strong memory of like starting kindergarten and just thinking like that the other girls were like, it's weird to call a 5-year-old thinner, but just like having like, they were thinner, they were smaller, they had different bodies than I did. And I think as I got older, like once I hit like 4th grade, 5th grade, like that was really when it started to set in that like my body was different, or and at least my my feelings around my body, my weight, and food were really starting to
So
to
around when you were 8 years old.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, because biologically, around the ages between 8 and 12, we call these the formative years, and it's when
Hmm.
your brain really starts to behave a little bit more adult-like, and you've integrated more information and experience, and you can experience it in a different way than when you're younger. So it makes
Hmm.
perfect sense that you were able to almost like just be so keen to understand the difference. And I don't think that should be ignored that you felt different than
Yeah.
others. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the
And
experience.
yeah, and one of the first times that I remember food being more than just like, I don't know, eating food, like having an emotional response to food was coming home. And I had gotten this dumb fight with this dumb boy when I was like in fourth grade. And I came home and I made myself this big bowl of popcorn. And I was heading down the stairs and I passed my sister on the stairs. I was going into the basement and she was like trying to talk to me. I was like, don't talk to me. I had a terrible day. I'm going downstairs and I'm going to eat popcorn. Like just and like from that those early times, really what one of the things is that the food would sort of let me disconnect and like just turn my certain part of my brain or my nervous system kind of off, and it would just like soothe me.
I'm not putting words in your mouth. Did it numb you, or what did it do for you? What
I
was
think
the
it just
what we call
it
the secondary gain? What was it?
Yeah, it calmed me, and it just really it's an image in my mind of like a robot pulling a plug out of the wall. Like I could just like sort of power down or just like
Right,
totally like get into a space where I'm
right.
not feeling all the overwhelming emotion. I'm not
That's it.
feeling the like agitation and the stress. I'm just sort of cutting my brain off. And I think, I can do that in all sorts of ways, but the primary way was always with food. And as I got
Wonderful.
older and, middle school, high school, and into like early adulthood, the frenzy around the amount that I was eating, sneaking food and just like needing to like just
Seeking? Did
want
you say seeking food?
sneaking,
Yeah.
sneaking,
Hmm.
and like just the craving cycle of
Right.
like the agitation of wanting to eat, wanting to eat a lot, knowing that that was going to make me feel terrible, and then that shame cycle, and then all the feelings again, and then having it just be this rush of wanting more again.
So, there are scientists who believe that our food habits are sort of laid down around that formative year period of 8 to 12. And that's when we learn how to cope with emotion and feelings and food. And
Mm.
that when we integrate that into our brain and it becomes what we like to say is hardwired in a way, it becomes the standard behavior. And it speaks to the addiction of food, which we're going to talk about. But your story is very common, which is it tracked from childhood into
Mm.
adulthood.
Hmm.
And I think, you use the word frenzy, and that's a very powerful word. And maybe you can talk just a little bit about what that frenzy in your head was like.
It's so wild to now have a sense of calm around it, to sort of see the contrast, because it's like the memory of it, the image of it is like an electrical storm in my brain and my body of just like, okay, I need this, like going into the kitchen, opening the cabinets, getting something,
Right.
trying to put it back. There's nothing in the cabinets that appeals to me, but I'm still getting up and going back there, and
Yep.
like, just the compulsive,
Yep.
like
Yeah.
craving, compelling, like just like it needs to happen, it needs to happen, but I don't want it to happen, but it needs to happen, like I need that.
It's almost sometimes it seems like people are almost observing themselves as if they were in a movie and they don't have control over their behavior. I like
Yeah.
to call it alien hand syndrome, where
Hmm.
they're just grabbing, but they can't stop because it's hijacked your brain.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely feeling hijacked.
yeah.
Oof. Yeah.
One of the things that we talk about a lot is reward and the reward value of food. And there is a reward pathway in the brain, and this is a biological pathway with neurotransmitters. You can track it. It's not some woohoo make believe thing. There's a real reward pathway, and we call it reward sensitivity in terms of what the food means to you. So, a chocolate chip cookie at age 18 or 25 or whatever it is might have meant more to you, the
Mm-hmm.
reward value, than someone else, right?
Yeah.
And one of the ways that we could determine this frequently would be to simply ask, how hard would you work for food?
Yeah. Do you want me to answer that?
Well, sure. Yeah, if
Yeah,
you want.
I would work pretty hard. I mean, from just like multiple trips out to the grocery store, like spending a lot of money when I didn't really have a lot of money.
Yeah,
Just sort of like, I just remember, especially when I was really trying to deal with this in like my mid 20s, of like just feeling like I was being led around by the nose to kind of like go to this donut shop and go to this ice cream place. And if I walk 10 more blocks, I can get here. And just like the exhaustion of like, I'm
right.
exhausted. I don't really want to be doing this. But there was always this feeling of not only just the cravings, but I wanted to stop so badly. Like I wanted to have such a better relationship with food. And I thought, okay, well, today I'll just do this today. I'll finish out this big grand fantasy plan of like eating every good baked thing in New York, and then I'll be done, and tomorrow I'll start again.
Right.
So literally that was up until 6 months ago, that's been my experience. And really the fight of what became alarming enough for me to really want to do something more, explore something more medical about it, was the pendulum swing of feeling more in control, and then
Exactly.
the swing back. If I would eat something that felt like I just blew it, or like give in to one of those cravings, then the pendulum swing was so bad. And I've lost weight before, and no matter how much I lost, I was ricocheting back and gaining all of it
Yeah,
plus. And I was starting to get to a point where it's like, okay, now I'm really scared, because
you're
just
scared.
eating like normal volume
Mhm.
felt like I was restricting myself and trying so hard to keep a lid on things. And really, I just was at a point where I was like struggling with the idea of even trying
Yeah.
anymore.
I jotted down the word control, and then you used the word. But before you said the word, I was thinking what it sort of is almost boiling down to is this level of self-regulation and control, or loss of that you simply, it's like you're a prisoner in this body and you have no
Mm-hmm.
control over what it's doing, as
Mm-hmm.
much as as much as you kind of can see it, but you understand that there's something wrong, but you don't have that control, that
And
deeper.
that was what was that. I mean, it's funny to be saying this in the past tense, because it's like so clear and
I
present.
know it's very, I know, because, her life has been altered so much that that's what you're sensing when you're listening to her, is because she's sort of throwing in a little bit, which I could understand, of what it's like now compared to, but we will get to
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But it's okay because you're really making the point. But go ahead.
Um,
We're talking about control.
so control to me is one of those words that I'm a little scared of, because I was always presented with this idea that if I didn't try to restrict, then I wouldn't go into a cycle of binging and overeating. So that was my model before, was like, I have to, or I want to really learn how to eat in a way where I'm eating intuitively, or having a sense of like, if I want ice cream, I can have a little bit of ice cream, so that I'm not putting too much restriction on it. But I never was able to get that
You get that.
balance under control. And it just felt like I was the dumbest, most incapable,
Right.
laziest person in the world, who was just constantly throwing boulders in my own way.
Yep.
And why was I doing that? And why couldn't I get it together? And what was wrong with me?
Yep.
And it's been just unbelievably eye-opening to have that shift.
Well, we observe very frequently people buying the message that you're at fault, and you buy it and you believe it and you internalize it. And it's like how you define yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not a good feeling, right? It's associated with very low self-esteem and low what we call self-efficacy, the belief that you can, because you don't believe you can. You don't believe you can get control of this thing. I think you said something really interesting. You said in passing that, you would say to yourself, I went ahead and I did it again. I just blew it. And that's a very harsh judgment that you would probably never say to anybody else who was struggling, who you cared about, who you loved, who was in need. You wouldn't
Oh
say
yeah.
to them, you blew it. But
Yeah.
yet
No.
it's so rampant in this population of people who struggle with this, that it's like this perfectionist all or nothing. You're beating yourself up, you're judging yourself constantly.
Endlessly.
Endless. Yeah.
And it
I
just,
think
yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think one of the strengths of our program is we don't judge. We
Yeah.
just don't.
Yeah.
It's so easy not to judge if you have the sensitivity to this, because it's just not your fault, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, and it's that kind of thinking that, oh, I blew it. Oh, I'll never be able to lose weight again. Oh, you stepped on the scale, it went in the wrong direction. You had, all this kind of stuff that contributes to that. And then you brought up something else interesting, which was restriction,
Mm-hmm.
which is always, I can say, and the research bears this out. When people restrict, there's only one thing that happens: they rebound. Because nobody really likes to be told what to do. And if you can imagine, for all the listeners, and I'm sure people listening can relate to this, when you're walking around 24/7 saying, I can't have that, I'm not supposed to do this, I shouldn't have this, I must not do that, which is it's fair to say that that's
Yeah.
the thoughts, right?
Absolutely. Because also my experience was that I really didn't have the ability to control how much I was eating. And if I did try to control it, or again control, just to eat like a what quote unquote would be what I'm seeing most normal other people eating,
Yeah.
was a struggle of like momentous proportions.
Right. So was all of this kind of observation of yours and experience, did it tend to isolate you from others?
Yes. Yeah. And not, I'm a very personable person. I love
Yeah.
to connect. Like there's so much about my life that I feel very like not isolated about.
Hmm.
But this struggle, well, it was just embarrassing and so
Yeah.
much shame and so different. Like I grew up with one side of my family really struggling. We didn't really talk about it, but it was very obvious, that this one's on a diet and trying to lose weight and then gain weight again. And then another side of my family being what I consider like more of how I can eat now with the medication, where it's like, that's delicious. I had one of those. That was great. Moving on. And like, that was never my experience. So there was always this feeling of like, well, why and how can everybody else, and I know that's not true, but like, can everybody else have this sort of more normative relationship with food, and
I,
I'm just like struggling. Like
I
Rich,
mean, I've heard that.
even you, Rich, when you would talk about, you'd be like, "Oh, I just had some M's." I'm like, "What? That doesn't make sense to me that you could just eat some M's and have some,
Right.
I don't know."
Well, that's my famous M&M story of being in the Radio Shack.
Checkout line.
And I went in there for a power strip where you plug a bunch of things in, and I walk around the corner, around the aisle, and in the Radio Shack, there's like a whole candy counter. It's like, what is candy doing in the electrical store, right? And I did for a while have an affinity for M's, and I knew the way I eat them because they don't taste very good, really. So I would just tear the whole bag, tear the top off and just pour it all in my mouth. I said, I'm teaching this. I need to execute it too, implement. And this is not what I want right
Yeah,
now. I do not want to walk outside the store and pour this whole bag of M&Ms in. To what purpose, right?
yeah,
It just Yeah.
And then you were able to say that to yourself, and then move on and not do it.
Yeah, and I was able to do it, and you weren't, and it was very common to hear people ask me, Rich, what is it like to be normal? Like what, that happened, that happened a lot. And I would also be asked frequently, Rich, because you mentioned this, how can I be so good at everything else in my life
Mhm.
and not this? Like you're a big success, in a kind of, I don't know if it's completely male dominated, but you work in a museum and you've worked your way up, and there's been problems at that place, and
Yeah.
but here you are, a real success. And so it's like, and people would always ask, Rich, how can I be so good at everything else and not this? And
Yeah. And
the
I
answer,
remember being in the group with so many people, like an earthquake scientist and
yeah, right, oh
someone
right, I
who
remember
put
her. Yeah,
together like film festivals and a photographer for the New York Times, and like there's so much determination and all the things that we would learn about trying to relate to weight loss, like resiliency and all of those different topics we would cover. I could do them in other ways, and it almost clouded my understanding of like, just thinking like, oh, it must be a fluke. I really am not, I'm not capable of doing this in my life. And this is just, who knows how I wound up, working in a profession that I'm of my choice and doing well in it.
yeah.
And it clouding all of the self.
Well, I think, it speaks to your perseverance, it speaks to your values, your ethics, it speaks to what's important to you and your ability to believe in yourself at some level on certain things. And I think that's right. I do remember the earthquake scientist. She was brilliant.
Incredible.
Incredible, right? All over the international, they would send her everywhere to evaluate earthquakes.
I mean,
Whoever heard of an earthquake scientist? I remember screening her, interviewing her. I said, "You do what?"
yeah.
Let me ask you a concrete question. Do you think that having obesity is a chronic disease?
Yes.
And what makes you say that?
Personal experience. I mean, and this is another thing that I don't know that I would have answered so definitively before, but now just understanding that there is this treatment for it, that like a medical treatment that fits whatever, issue that I have, that has been so helpful, really makes it obvious to me that there's it's a chronic issue that's health
Yeah.
related,
Yeah.
that somehow can be helped.
Yes. Yeah. Because there are still people who believe this is not a chronic disease.
Yeah,
And but even the World Health Organization have said it is. And
yeah, I struggle with that.
yeah, I know. And
Do
seriously,
you?
like the World Health Organization and the Centers for Disease Control and the American Medical Association, all the medical agencies across the world all believe and have stated so that this is a chronic disease, which means that it requires chronic treatment, which we're going to talk about in just one more minute. I think you've already established that you think this is also an addiction,
Yeah, for sure. For
right?
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. And
uh,
we have a lot of evidence for, I'm not going to get into the science of that, but we have plenty of real scientific evidence. Nora Valco is the director of drug abuse at the National Institute of Health. Her and Jean-Jacques Wang have done more research in this area than anyone else. I have all the slides, and I can prove without a reasonable doubt that this behaves just like addiction. In fact, if you show a cocaine substance abuser, alcohol abuser, and a food abuser, the brain scan of those three people and you show it to a neuroscientist, the neuroscientist will not be able to tell the way the brain is lighting up what substance that individual is addicted to. And anyone who argues with, I don't even argue with people anymore about it, because it just means that they lack the science background, they don't understand it, and it's sort of like they look for confirmation bias, which means they just look for any evidence in the environment that proves their point. But the reality is that it is. So, yeah.
just my 2 cents worth on that. I work in cybersecurity, and in cybersecurity, we have this concept of, let's say you work for a company and, you work with 100 people and 50 of those people constantly click on the wrong email and constantly get phished. They get they get spam and they follow through on whatever the spammer wants them to do. So the only way to kind of deal with that situation is education, right? So we have what we call security awareness training that we start to implement, and little by little, that behavior changes for the people. So for me, I don't necessarily believe that it's a disease because I think, first of all, we're bombarded with all kinds of food advertisements, and nobody tells us, not even our doctors, what is a good amount of food versus how much food you shouldn't eat. So people, they have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that breakfast, lunch, and dinner is probably more than 3,000 calories. So you don't think about nutrition, you don't think about the fact that you're getting more calories than you need, and then nobody's moving around, right? We're all sitting. Now we have scooters and electric things. Like, I don't even see kids walking to school anymore. They're riding, uphill on one of these scooters. And so those things are a constant. And I think, and in my mind, like, I have not been through your program, Rich, but in my mind, your program is the security awareness training for obesity. So, like, to me, it's controllable. And I did lose my 40 pounds so far without medication, just willpower, really, right? I mean, I talk to you every now and then, and I've had other coaches as well, but it's like these bits and pieces that I pick up along the way that I kind of incorporate into what I do, and that's how I roll.
Well, I would respond to you with something that we call the genotype phenotype, which is a fancy way of saying you have the genes and a predisposition to some sort of disease, let's say diabetes or high blood pressure or something. And the gene doesn't always express itself. In other words, it has instructions, the gene. So you have a gene for blue eyes and brown hair or no hair, whatever. The gene only really expresses itself when the environment is such that it allows for it. So in our toxic food environment, the people who have the predisposition for the disease, because
That I agree with.
there's up to 700 genes that we have identified that are associated directly with weight. There are what we call monogenic genes, like the FTO gene or the melanocortin 4 gene, which when people have that one gene that has a mutation, something wrong with it, a derangement, they could weigh 500 pounds. How can that be? And so if there is no food, then correct. How are you going to eat, right? But we're bombarded. But think of it like this too. If you had alcohol addiction, let's say, and if you think about this, and you think about, just go through your day tomorrow and think about how many times do you see food tomorrow? Food vending machines, food vendors on the. Imagine if you had alcohol addiction and every time you saw food, yeah, it was alcohol. How would you break that addiction? How would you
Yeah,
cope with it? And I will tell you too, Alex, that this is not new. You can go back to the 1800s and read about this disease. It's just that we were more agricultural. We didn't have the amenities that we have today. So, and there is a reason why the World Health Organization and others think that this is a disease. So
and
we can leave it at that for the moment. But go ahead, Anne.
Different experiences. Different people have different experiences. Like for me, it's so clear that food was an emotional, addictive substance. Like it's something that, in my experience, the compulsion to do it, the lack of ability to really fight that or go against it, even when I just worked so hard so many different ways and just had so much trouble maintaining any sort of good relationship with food and with that behavior. So I mean, I guess people who struggle with being overweight, there's no like monolith to it. So I wonder, maybe other people's experiences that it is more environmental and not as much of an addictive issue, but I don't know.
I mean, no, I don't believe that. I think
Okay.
that, because you wouldn't say alcohol is not a disease, alcoholism is not a
Yeah.
disease or a substance use disorder, the same way as and so, no, I think that the environment certainly contributes to it. But there's It's multifactorial, as we say. There's 100 reasons why. I mean,
Yeah.
there's something called the thermoneutral environment. We live in 68 to 72 degrees everywhere we go. So your body doesn't have to work hard to burn any calories or anything because you're perfectly comfortable. But there's 100 other reasons why this thing it contributes. And so that's sort of, that's my take on it. And again, I just don't see any difference between the disease of alcohol addiction and food addiction. In the 90s, when I read Alan Marlat's book on relapse prevention, and he was the world's authority on alcohol addiction, it rocked my world. 1986 or 7. All I had to do was cross out the word alcohol. That's all I had to do, and put food, and it all fit. The
What
whole
about
bottle
smoking?
fit. What's that?
What about smoking? Is
Smoke.
it the addiction that's the disease, and you
Well,
just
nicotine
have
is,
different types,
I wouldn't
or
say smoking is a disease. It causes disease, but nicotine is the strongest addictive substance legal that we have. And it's
but to me,
why,
there's no difference between an alcohol addiction or a smoking addiction.
what's that?
I don't see the difference between like alcohol addiction and a smoking addiction. As someone
Well,
who used to smoke 10
brain,
packs a day, I
in the
mean,
brain, they behave similarly. I mean, you have dopamine and you have all neurotransmitters that are being activated that cause you to get more of your fix. The biology of the addiction is that, when we talk about dopamine, everybody's heard of that. That's just, simply put, it's a chemical transmitter in our brain that sends signals, and it attaches to receptors that make you feel better. So we have that with whether it's alcohol, cocaine, sex, gambling, food, whatever it is. You can't really delineate between any of them. They all look the same in the brain. They just really do. If I had slides here tonight, I could show them and show that it just doesn't look any different. So whether you believe addiction is a disease or not is up to you.
yeah, addiction, yeah, I do.
And I hear your argument, but again, every medical agency in the world believes that it is. I'd like to switch gears. I'd like to ask you, Anna, what is it that made you make the decision to start a weight loss medication, a GLP-1? And if you would tell people about that and what medicine you're taking,
Yeah.
start there, and then we'll talk about how your life has changed.
So I was just in another cycle of gaining weight again and just feeling really afraid that I just was never going to be able to get a handle on my relationship with food. And it was really like, I hated being in my body. I just was so uncomfortable, just claustrophobic and like just painful and uncomfortable. And it's like, how am I going to move forward in a direction in my life that feels better without putting myself again at the risk of doing all the things that I had tried previously. And I had, tried so many different ways of managing my weight, starting in like when I was 20, it's like 4 tours of duty at Weight Watchers, and then like just every sort of, way of responsibly trying to deal with getting a handle on this. And all the way up through working with dietitians, I went to an intensive outpatient program. I thought, for
Right.
what I thought was binge eating disorder, and
Right.
like
I
just
remember.
like really putting so much effort into it, and always having that pendulum swing back. And just so I came to you because I knew someone who had gotten weight loss surgery and said that it was very helpful for them, and someone close to me. And I was like, you know what, maybe it's time to explore that. I don't know how else to get out of this pain and this suffering. And you had told me that the medication was an option that you would recommend, exploring. And so I started talking to people who were on it, finding out that people very close to me had been taking the medication and
Right.
having really good success with it. And so I was like, you know what? Let's believe Rich. Let's believe these other people and give it a try. And it really was a leap into the dark, because what do I know? I don't know what's going to happen.
I understand. Sure.
Like, what if I grow a third arm and like,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, the reason I started the weight loss medication support group was because people were coming to me who were on the meds, and they sounded just like they were surgery patients, but they hadn't had surgery. But they were asking the same sort of questions. What do I do? I'm not hungry. How do I eat? I'm feeling full. I don't think about food all the time. And what do I do? How do I handle my life? It's like completely upside down. And I said to myself, these folks need a support group.
Yeah.
They just really do, because, you know, and I would say to Casey, our dietitian, Casey, you have to teach them how to eat again, because
Yeah.
suddenly you have what we call normal appetite regulation, the way
Yeah.
that the body was supposed to work, the adaptive way, because it doesn't make sense to have all these people have this struggle, because the species would not have survived.
Yeah.
So it's a maladaptation, and so that's why I started this. So your
Yeah.
analogy to the surgery is accurate.
Yeah, and so you taught me, and what the group I think teaches a lot of people is sort of the basics of how do I go about this? Okay, I want to try this medication. So what are the practical steps to take care of? And
Right.
so, you know, getting that education of what to go, don't, you know, prepare before you go to the doctor's office, look into your insurance, understand what sort of coverage is possible. And so I just went step by step, and you had recommended the tirzepatide or Zepbound if my insurance covered it. I did that research. My insurance covered it. Had to go to the doctor. You know, it was a couple, probably like 2-month process of really getting to the point where I was able to bring home a prescription to try.
Right.
But so I started Zepbound at the intro dose, 2.5 milligrams in early January.
Right.
Yeah.
And I recall vividly when you did, and I also recall only like 2 or 3 days later, you reported what?
Wild. It was wild. Like I still, like, my face lights up when I think about it, because and oh my god, I don't want to feel like I'm making an infomercial, because but it's the most profoundly surprising difference that I've ever experienced in my life. From the amount of struggle that I've had to literally a few days after starting it, feeling like, wow, I just want to eat like a normal amount of food, and I'm not craving, and the lack of the agitation in that craving cycle
Yeah.
is really what I think is really changing my life. I'm not in that awful, terrible place of like wanting to eating, knowing that it was putting me in a worse position, rinse, repeat for ad nauseum. And like, so just the change in my mood and my presence and my feelings of comfort in my body started very early. Like,
Yeah.
just like I would wake up, first thing I would think about before in the morning was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm in this body. I can't believe I'm as uncomfortable as I am. And now I can lay in my bed and just sort of like be like, oh, this feels good. Like, hello, day. That is not the experience that I've ever had in my life.
Right.
And I'm telling you right now, if I was hearing someone talk like this, I'd be like, yeah, right. But I am the least kind of like persuaded person, and this is just my lived experience. It really is astounding to me, and I'm not fighting myself. I'm not fighting this force that feels like it's just keeping me stuck. I have more mental space and energy to tackle other things. Like, life is not perfect, and I
Yeah.
struggle with so much insecurity and so many different things, like around work and around relationships, that I just now feel like I have the ability to focus on and work on, since I'm not just fighting food all day long.
Because the food controlled you.
Yeah.
Was, you know, when you ask people what are the top three most important things in your life, they'll frequently say, if they're religious, they'll say God, family, and weight. And if they're not religious, they'll say my job, family, and weight.
Mm,
And that is very telling, right? And
yeah.
so you have a sense of freedom that you didn't have. I want to read just a couple sentences from an email you
Okay.
sent to me. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you wrote, the weight loss feels good. But what I keep marveling at is the absence of the storm of addiction. I can't separate myself from living in a world where losing weight is applauded, and people compliment me. So I'm sure that's part of it. But it's like, really, I'm just so in awe of not feeling tortured right now. And I can't think of anything that's more chilling, makes my arms, the hair on my arm, it's profound and
It
poignant
is.
that you don't feel tortured.
I don't.
How can we even put a price on that?
I know. And I feel so lucky that my insurance covers this. I feel so lucky that I have your support and the group support to understand really how to do this the right way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the lack of feeling just totally demoralized by it,
Right.
demoralized and just out of energy and out of ideas. And like now it's just such a shift. And I recently went through the process of feeling it wane a little bit and having to increase my dose. And that was like a whole, I
I
sort of,
wanted to talk about that for a moment
yeah.
because I'll just break all HIPAA violations and say that Anna had been on the lowest dose of her medication for 5 months, which,
Mm-hmm.
it's supposed to work for a month and work for 5 months. And then she wrote, we correspond all the time. And she emailed me and she said she was getting nervous because all along she's kind of been nervous. Is this real? Can I trust this? Is it going to go
Is
back
it
to
going
the
to
other
last?
way?
Yeah.
Right? And so she emailed me and she said she was starting to get hungry and she was panicking a little bit. And I said, Anna, it's just time to increase the dose.
Yeah.
She had been at the lowest dose for 5 months. The schedule, the what we call the dosing schedule from the manufacturer is to increase the dose every month. Anna got 5 months out of the lowest dose. And it
Mm-hmm.
was obvious to me, very simple, one sentence, Anna, it's time to increase your dose.
I think
There's
your email was one sentence.
it was. I did. That's all it was. It was like, Anna, you just need to increase your dose. That's the simple answer here. Sometimes complex problems require simple solutions. And it was so obvious to me that that's all this was, right? That it was just starting to wear off a little bit and you were
Mm,
starting to get hungry. But you got 5 months out of it.
yeah.
So, and then what did you tell me? The moment you took it, like within I think
Literally the next
immediately.
day. Yeah. And it was interesting to, again, have that contrast between how I was feeling. So I wouldn't necessarily say that like the thing that was occurring to me was that I was getting hungry. I was getting that craving cycle back. And I was starting to go between like savory, sweet, and
Yes.
wanting to eat more. And I was able to eat a lot more. And I find, on the medication when I'm eating, I've been through the boot camp of nutrition counseling
Yeah.
since, I can remember. So I'm very familiar with how much I'm, meant to eat for my body within a range, what portions look like, and what a real meal looks like. So all of a sudden, I was starting to get into a position where that wasn't feeling like enough and I wanted more and it was getting noisy in my head. And so,
Right.
yeah, after, you talked me down from a panic attack about, oh God, it's not working anymore. I'm failing. It's going to be bad. And I just went and I, did the practical things of talking to my insurance and getting the prescription filled for a new dose. And then literally I took it on a Friday night and I woke up Saturday morning and I was like, "Oh, there it is. It's back." And I don't know if that's medically
The good
possible,
feeling is back, the
but yeah,
control. Yeah.
yeah. And just,
I frequently define this as if you imagine a clean sheet of white paper and you draw a very heavy pencil line on it and you attempt to erase the line, you still will see a remnant of that pencil line. And that is the old you. It doesn't go away. We don't cure this disease,
mhm,
we manage it. The same as diabetes, as high blood pressure, or anything else. If you got blood pressure under control with medicine and you stopped taking the medicine because your blood pressure was normal, your blood pressure would go back up. If you have diabetes and you're controlling it with insulin and then you stop then your normal blood sugar and then you stop the insulin, what's going to happen to your blood sugar? Well, this is no different. Behaves exactly the same. And so this is this heavy pencil line that fades to the background when you restore this new regulation,
mhm, mhm.
appetite regulation, honestly. Because, if you search appetite regulation in the medical literature, you will get 7,000 research articles on appetite regulation. It's very complex, but in a very simple way, this medicine is working not only in your stomach to slow down the gastric emptying, the emptying from your stomach so that you feel more full. That's why you feel full, because it slows down the food digestion so it stays in your stomach longer. And it works in your brain to decrease that drive, that obsessing that you're talking about, that craving, because it interrupts the reward pathway. So that reward pathway that was hijacking your brain is not doing it any longer,
Yeah.
because the medication is not letting it. And so the moment that you started to have that old pencil line come back,
Yeah.
and you took the medicine overnight, you took it Friday night, Saturday morning, you were back to the control again,
Yeah.
because the receptors that the medicine searches for, we call them glucagon like peptides. You don't need to know what that means, but GLP, it has receptors like all medicine. Every medicine you take, it's designed to find a receptor in your body to make the medicine work. So whether it's an asthma medicine that attaches to receptors that help you breathe better, so this GLP medicine attaches to receptors that help you gain control of your regulation, and when you were appetite regulation. And so when you were starting to kind of feel a little bit like it was coming back, that old pencil line, bam, one
Yeah.
sentence from me: take a higher dose.
Yeah.
And it came back, and you got the control again. And this really does speak to the chronicity, and it's a big word, chronicity, the chronic disease. That's what this really speaks to, the chronicity of it. Just like any other chronic disease, this is how can you say it's different? If somebody has blood pressure, high blood pressure, and they're controlled with medication, and they stop the medicine, their blood pressure goes back up. We don't ever hear anybody say, oh, but you'll have to take it for the rest of your life, or is it safe? When you take the blood pressure medicine every day, this you take once a week. Or diabetes. We don't hear people say, you're taking insulin because you can't control your blood sugar, there's something wrong with you. No, we don't do that. We only do it with weight, because we have a bias. We have an internal, intrinsic, societal bias that does not go away. There are people who believe this is still your fault. I mean, even our Secretary of Health has said, you don't need a GLP-1, just eat healthier. This is the most ignorant comment you can imagine.
Well,
It
also just
defies what's really happening.
From people who, I mean, I guess I don't know personally, but if you haven't experienced it, you just don't.
You can't explain it.
Yeah.
You can't.
And I wouldn't have believed it either.
Let me ask you something. If somebody were to say to you, Anna, what do you need this medicine for? You're cheating. You're taking the shortcut. You're cheating. That's all you're doing when you're taking this. How would you respond to them?
That this is a medical solution for a medical problem, and that it's really helped me in ways that I wouldn't have guessed that it could be this way. So if this is cheating, I will cheat.
Yeah.
That's really, I feel like I've put in my time.
Yeah.
I've done all the work, I've taken all the tests the right way. And it just like, at this point, like it's just helped me so much. And I feel so differently. And so if this is cheating, I'll okay.
Right. Exactly. But it would be the same thing.
Judgment.
But it would be the same thing if somebody had high blood pressure and you say to them, well, you're cheating by taking a high blood pressure medicine, or you're cheating for taking insulin when you have diabetes. I mean, nobody says that. No one says that. So I call this, and I've written blogs on it, medication bias. Yeah. And that medication bias is very closely associated with bias against people with obesity, because it all fits together. It's your fault, lack of willpower. We don't say that about somebody with high blood pressure. We don't say that with somebody who has diabetes. We only say it with this. And so I like how you put it. That's the answer. I think you said it really nicely.
Well, and I just believe it, like it's just true for me. That's true.
Well, it is true. So it's true, but it's not just true for you. It's true for millions of people. Yeah. I mean, I really, truly, I wish all millions of people would come to our support group, because we are the only one in the country doing this. And we are helping a lot of people. There was a study published. It showed 25,000 admissions to the emergency room because of side effects from GLP-1s. Well, guess what? In our 17 months of running our medication support group, no one has gone to the emergency room. This paper, written by fancy doctors, 25,000 admissions to the emergency room. We've had none. Why? Because people come 75 minutes a week. They get the support they need. They learn the science of it. They learn how to eat. They learn how to deal with all the things you're describing and the emotional things too. Like, oh my God, my life is completely altered. Like,
Yeah.
I just can't even believe this. And I'm like, it's just like crazy, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but that's what happens, and that's why we're successful at what we do, because it's a very high standard of care that we're giving it. Nowhere else can you find it, as
Well,
Alex
also
pointed out.
there's just so much education that you're offering, and like the way
Yeah,
to do it right. Like I've had, people in my life tell me other stories about people who've taken the medication and, it went terribly. And like,
right,
just because they didn't know then how
yeah,
to eat on it and like weren't getting that sort of
right,
support and dealing with. So the education and the
yeah.
support
I
I think
mean,
is so paramount.
you don't get that really with telehealth. You don't get it. And your physician means well, but they're busy and they
Yeah.
have a thousand things to do. They got to know all of those medicines. I don't have to know. All I have to know is know one GLP. That's all I got to know. So I can become a super expert on this and have more experience than any physician because I didn't go to medical school. If I have a strep throat, I don't know how to, I need to go to the doctor to find out what antibiotic. But I know how to help you with this, and it's all I
And
do.
the other thing, Rich, is that you practiced and had this lifestyle change group and worked with people who struggled with this for years and years and years and years before this was a tool in your toolbox. So like there's a lot of
Yeah,
education that you offer that is I feel like the medication is sort of like this bonus, like this key that's allowing the people
that's
in your
exactly right.
that you
Yep,
work with to be able to utilize what you
yep.
have just been
Be-
teaching all along.
That's a thank you, because I don't think everybody has to go on the medicine. If you don't want to, I'm fine. We have a lifestyle change program. We still have it because I know there are people who don't want medicine. I'm not going to twist their arm. If you don't like medicine, come to the lifestyle change group. It's perfectly okay. When before these, I was never for the medications until these new ones came out. And, I've been doing this 4 decades. But we always had a lifestyle change program, and 92% of the people lost weight
Mm-hmm.
without meds.
Mm-hmm.
92%. It's unprecedented. Nobody's ever heard of data like that.
That's a huge number.
It's a huge number. And we were doing it without medication. So now the difference is what I observe, and from your confirming, I think, is all of the skills that we were teaching to manage cravings, to, talk to yourself and talk yourself to, now you still have all those skills, but it's easier to implement them.
I can use them.
You
And
can use them.
I don't like when I used to hear some of these things before that would just be repeated and repeated and repeated. Like
Must have
I
drove
could,
you crazy.
oh my God, I wanted to throw very well meaning, lovely, wonderful dietitians out of windows because I was like, if you talk
Right.
to me again about eating dried fruit instead of dessert, I'm going to
Or a deck
really
of
like
cards being three
and the
ounces of
deck of
meat.
cards for my protein, like I can't do it. And if
Yeah.
I could, and like now I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I should really eat that deck of cards.
Yeah.
And like I'm like dried fruit is going to give me more fiber in my life, which I need.
Yeah.
Now I'm really, it's not only that I know how I have this whole memory bank and all these skills that I've really internalized, and it's been so gratifying to be able to
Yeah.
actually use them and to like all the tools that I've had and learned over the years to not just resent them as another thing that made me feel like I was bad at life, but like now being able to really use them and
Yeah.
have it
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
successful.
And I will confirm that Anna worked as hard as anybody and harder than many. And she hung in there, persevered. I mean, she could have thrown the towel in long ago. And she could have even weighed 50 pounds more than she did before she started those meds. But she never let that happen. And it speaks to her strength. And, I mean, she didn't think oh, there's going to be a medication. I mean, that's not what she walked around thinking or waiting for. She just stuck with it because those are her values, her core values, her ethics. It's just who she is. She persevered. And now, finally, there's help.
Finally. Yeah.
Finally, there's help for this.
Yeah. And I just feel so grateful.
Yeah.
And like just having the experience of like being able to be successful in losing weight and feeling more comfortable in my body. Not
Yeah.
even just the number on the scale. Like I literally just feel I can do my yoga better. I can live in my life. I'm dancing around my apartment.
I was going to bring it up if you didn't.
Well, you love to tell people,
She
but
sends me an email. She sends me an email. She says, Rich, I'm dancing around my apartment. I never brought it up in the, well, no, did I bring it up in the group? Yeah, I
you
did. Yeah.
did.
Well, I had to. I couldn't help it.
The whole world knows now.
Well,
Now the whole world knows.
by my own admission,
but
but it just feels good.
when's the last time you danced around your apartment?
No, walking from the couch to the kitchen was like a painful reminder of how uncomfortable I was in my body. And now I just feel better. I feel like I can move and like I have energy, and it's
Your
really,
whole what we call affect is different. You're brighter. You're happier.
I'm
I mean,
happier.
you're happier. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the simplest way to put it. You are happier. You're not as controlled by these demons. There's no black box that you open and the boogeyman is in there. None of that is there anymore.
Yeah.
And we're lucky to have this. I
Yeah.
joke with colleagues sometimes, boy, I'm really glad they got this done at the end of my career, because had they discovered these medicines 44 years ago, I'd be shoveling snow somewhere. I'd be doing some other kind of job because I'd be out of work. But yeah, no, it's wonderful. And we do have more to look forward to, and the medications are going to get better and better. We're at the infancy of this. I mean, there are, many companies who are starting to work on even better iterations of this. So we only have really good news ahead. And I appreciate that you want to take care of yourself, that you have joined the support group, that you recognize the value of that. And it's making the whole journey just a lot easier because you can rely on 17 of your peers who are also struggling with it, and healthcare providers who really know what they're doing, and we care.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
I started this thing because I care. I started it.
And you really do care. And Casey is wonderful, and like the resources that you've amassed and are sharing, it's just it's such a luxury to
And
have.
I do have to say, I know it's kind of touchy feely, but it is such a privilege to work with you folks and watch this transformation, because I have struggled along with you all this time. I didn't have the struggle, but I struggled along with you. I felt it all the time. And to have the privilege to get to know so many people so intimately, right? I mean, people telling me things they would never have shared with anybody else, and the struggle, and to see the your eyes lighting up, it brings me to tears sometimes. It truly does. And I know it brings some of you to tears sometimes, because it's life altering. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to ride alongside and guide you and give you information you need. But you teach me just as well. And after every group, I always feel better. I just do. I mean, I wish the groups wouldn't end. I go on sometimes an extra half hour, because it's just so much fun and exciting, and I just feel so much relief for all of you that
Yeah.
you're able to really experience what you have so articulately described here. I mean, I don't think there's any possible vagueness in what you're describing. You're crystal clear on how it's altering your life. And there's just nothing more powerful. To me, it's, I was saying it was a game changer. I never used that term before in my life. Now I don't say game changer. I say life altering,
Yeah.
because it is.
Yeah.
And it, I just give you so much credit for doing. I thank you guys all the time for showing up and for making that group work. You can be anywhere else, but you want to take care of yourselves, and you let us do that. And like I always say, you show up with an open heart and an open mind, and you let us help you. And
Yeah.
there's, you know, there's no substitute for that. It's such a privilege. I feel so fortunate. Not everybody has a job where you get to know people so well and help them and watch and observe the transformation. I can't thank you enough for being here, for sharing your story, for so much honesty and courage and everything. I think I know this is so sappy, but I just think the world of you. I just am in awe of everything you have accomplished and achieved, and I'm just so pleased for you that I just, it just touches my heart. I love our email exchanges. Every email I open from Anna, Alex, is like another adventure. It's just, her experience and how articulate and psychologically oriented she is in describing it. And every email is just a little bit more. And I'm just enamored with it. There's truly nothing that makes me feel better. No matter how down I might even be feeling, when I go into that group, after that group, bam, it's
Happy to
wonderful.
help.
It's just a two-way street. It's a great collaboration. I'm getting as much as you all are, and it just works. So we really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything that you'd like to finish with or tell
Um,
people? You want to talk to people who are thinking maybe about considering it? What would you like to say to them? And
I
again, not to twist their arms, but
Yeah, no,
something
there's
to think
no,
about.
yeah, no, just honestly sharing my experience that it's been a really profound change for the better. That I just I really had tried everything else, and I this is how I feel and how I'm able to interact with food, and the fact that I'm able to just sort of lose weight eating things that I enjoy. And like I went to France and I ate croissants, and it wasn't like throwing out just like there goes the plan. And it just was like it's so much quote unquote more normal than whatever
Yeah.
that means.
I mean, there are some people who report, oh, they miss the food. Do you ever miss, like,
Sometimes in the beginning, I feel like I was adjusting to just not having that like brain lighting up experience of that food would give me. Like in the beginning, it was like I was trying different
right,
things that
right,
I loved, that I would be like, huh, this tastes like just food instead of supercharged food with extra
right.
food. Yeah.
But I also want to point out that when you had that supercharged experience, there was a big crash out
Oh,
of
yeah, 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 yeah. No, that sort of feeling is gone. I was also worried that somehow I wasn't going to feel good about other things, or somehow I was going to lose
right.
like
Yeah.
pleasure in life, and like that's not the
No,
case.
honestly, to watch you like learn all of this
Yeah.
and experience it and internalize it, I I'm going to watch this podcast myself a million times because, and I get to see you each week and it's a pleasure every single time. And now I have you on video so I can watch you whenever I
Oh
want.
my God. No, I really am very grateful for
Well,
all the years, Rich. You've helped in so many ways. And like just the being able to stick with it. I always sort of knew that I had Rich to reach out to. I don't know how long it was between me last speaking to you before I was like, I need surgery, or what am I going to do?
right.
And like, it was like
Yeah.
all picked right back up. And you've been such a help. So thank you.
Well, it is my pleasure. And again, I am also grateful for you and for coming with an open heart and an open mind and being so courageous and honest and willing to take risk and just lay it out on the table. I mean, so it's an equal collaboration. I agree we know what we're doing, but there are plenty of people who help reject, and you didn't do that, and that's a tribute to you. So I think it's a very good symbiotic collaboration that we have, and
Yeah.
it's never going to go. I'll never let it. I'll come
Okay.
get you. I'll
I'm
find you.
stuck. I'm stuck.
All right. Well, anything else you want to just finish with? Anything else? I mean, I've given you. I mean, you've said plenty.
Yeah, I just can't emphasize enough how much better I feel. And even regardless of what happens going forward, and when I start to panic of like, is it going to keep working, is it real, just being in the moment, being able to experience the peace and the comfort in my body and my mind is really just like, it's profoundly informing the rest of my life. So I just try to take it, really 1 minute at a time, and
That's it. And that's all you can do.
And feel the good feelings, because
Yep.
I'm not used
Great.
to that, and it feels really good.
Great. Well, listen, thank you for agreeing to do this. We will have some other folks on from the group as well, and we're going to hear variations, but it's still going to be the same underlying story. But I think it's really a service. You're helping a lot of people to understand a lot of things. You're helping people understand that this is an addiction, a disease. It's traumatic, and it can be turned around, and that it's not your fault. I think that's
Yeah.
the most important message of all. It's just
Yeah.
not your fault. It's not a lack of willpower. It's not a character flaw. It's not some lack of discipline. It's not that at all. It has nothing to do with that. And anybody who thinks that hasn't worked with the population. And I really know that in my heart because I have, and I've seen it. And you don't have to have the most sensitive cap on your head to understand the struggle. So more power to you. I'm so happy I know you. I'm happy you're in my life. It's just pure joy. So
Same.
thank you
Same.
again very, very much for being here. Alex, you want to wrap up or?
Yeah, I mean, this was it's an inspirational story. So very happy to have met you and been part of this podcast.
So we
Yeah,
have,
I mean, go ahead.
go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I don't think I have anything. I know we talked about setting up a Discord server. We talked about our Q&A app, which is going through Q&A.
Yep.
So there's a lot of stuff
Yeah.
kind of happening behind the scenes, but
Yeah.
I don't have any exact updates.
In the next few
this
weeks,
week.
we have some folks, some sleep researchers who are going to really talk about not just the problems when you don't sleep properly, but what to do about it. And we have two real experts on that. We have somebody coming and talking about your brain, and she's an expert brain person and appetite regulation, and she'll be able to explain the mechanisms that we're describing already tonight in a simple way. And I'll probably have to kind of interpret because she's so smart. I don't think she understands that nobody understands what she's talking about, but I do. So I'll help with that. But we want to continue on this kind of thread that present both very educated, invested researchers, as well as the people who, like Anna, are on the receiving end of all that research and all that chemistry and all the work that people have done to put this thing together for you. So it's just, it's wonderful.
Yeah. And we've got some good topics coming up. We came up with some good ideas for additional podcasts, even without a guest.
Yep.
I think debunking some of the myths and things that are out there. And
when Alex and I just do a podcast by ourselves, forget it, because only for
we could go on for hours, but we are at way past the hour mark, so we should wrap this one up.
We gotta go.
All right, Alex, we are at 1 minute and 23 seconds. I don't know how to turn the thing off. You are the
Sure.
tech guy.
All right. I'm putting an end to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you stay
Thank
for a
you.
minute? Can she be